Hey, AJ Hartley, novelist, Shakespeare professor, BabyMetal fan, and I am here to talk about the second track on the Metal Resistance album, Karate, which is one of my favorite songs. I mean, I got to say, it's a great emblem of the album in many ways. But there are no weak songs on this album. Um, it's a much more even-keeled kind of record, I think, than either the one before or after it. A sense here that they've sort of figured out their identity, at least for the moment, and there's a sort of gravitas and seriousness to it. Um, so this is the first video I did since the Kingslayer one, and I plan to continue to work my way through this album. This is a fairly simple song, so I don't know how much I'm going to have to say about it. I really like it, and I want to play the whole thing, but it's probably not that much to say. Though I always say that and go on for like a year. All right, let's go. Okay, I'm going to keep stopping this because this is such an iconic video, and it's an official video and a studio video at that. So I think there's more chance of this getting a copyright block. So I'm going to break it up a lot. And I'm sure most of you who are watching this have seen this video 1,000 times, and you can obviously go and watch it again. So forgive me for keep stopping it. But I chose this video because I wanted to talk about some of the visual elements as well as the song, right? The song itself is, in certain respects, at least by BabyMetal standards, quite simple, right? I was talking about Road of Resistance last time, or before I did the Kingslayer response thing. And, by comparison, Road of Resistance is a much more complex song. It has a lot more separate movements. There's not a lot of repetition to it. This is a much more straightforward verse chorus kind of song. There's a lot of repetition towards the end, and so I really wanted to use the visuals, not just of the live performance, but as they're invoked in this first video. So right from the start, we see the three figures in white, which we're going to talk about later, and there's so much drama and weight to this, right? This is a different kind of theatricality than we've seen from BabyMetal before, a much more measured, more mature, more serious kind of approach to its brand of drama. Look at that. Just gorgeous. Okay, so right from the start, we're seeing more visual effects. We're going to see those later on in the video as well. The sort of tendency to split the bodies so that they slide separately apart. We also see that this is taking place in what looks like, a lab theater, a black box studio or a dance studio. And the band, I hesitate to call them the Cami band because this is not really not a live show, is in the background, and they never really fully appear. We get little glimpses of them, but they're heavily masked. We get little flashes of their instruments here and there, but this is clearly a video that foregrounds them, and we get that great sliding, dark, grungy sort of metal guitar, punctuated by this first set of dance moves, which are clearly, obviously, karate inspired, and are emblematic of what the whole song is about, right? So we start with this sort of ritualized punch mechanism, yeah? And obviously this is dance, so it feels like choreography rather than martial arts, but I think that's also intentional because in a way, the song is finally not so much about fighting in a conventional sense than it is about this almost Zen-like sense of self and struggle. Okay, so now we've seen all the protagonists of the video. We get the glimpses of the band. We see the three girls in black and red up front, and you'll notice also that they're wearing some sort of simulation of armor, that sort of fabricated metal kind of look, which we have really only seen in the Ijime Dame Zettai official video, which I didn't like very much. And usually it's more the sort of straight tutus in these early in the videos for the first album particularly. So we have a more sort of martial kind of look. The figures in white, that's fascinating. That look is almost somewhere between shroud and wedding dress, and obviously it's hooded, so which gives it that sort of, again, ceremonial, liturgical kind of feel. And then the masks underneath, which to me clearly have a kind of skull motif, right? But it's also sort of bejeweled, and the lower part of the face mask looks like one of those chainmail visors. So it's semi-decorative, but it's also military in an old-fashioned sense. And then we get a glimpse of this other adversary figure, this sort of solo dancer. We're going to get a better look at him in a second, so I'll talk more about that when we see him. Yeah. Let's go back just a second. Okay, so who or what is this? And I can't answer this question completely, and I've looked around online for people coming up with good suggestions and good ideas, and they're mostly not really there, or at least I'm not finding them. So I think that there are a number of things going on here. That image shows some of them, not all. So we're wearing the sort of the white fur. It looks sort of oddly like a sort of combination of a figure out of Japanese mythology with almost a Native American, Hopi maybe kind of look. I don't think that this is trying to sort of evoke a specific figure. The makeup has a slightly sort of kabuki kind of feel, and when you get a better look at him, you'll see that the lines on the face, the white makeup has sort of blue lines. Kabuki really only uses like three colors of, beyond the white base, three colors of face makeup: red, brown, and blue. And blue always signifies an adversarial and usually otherworldly kind of figure, a demonic or ghostly kind of presence. So there's that. There's a sense of the sort of spiritual enemy which this person represents. And I think it's supposed to be an abstract thing. You see on the top of his head he's wearing a skull, and when the first few times that I saw it, I wondered if that was supposed to be a sort of fox skull, and he makes this sort of claw gesture. I was like, is this somehow a sort of kitsune manifestation? And I suppose it could be if we interpret it in a certain way. But he also has a sort of spiral goat horns, which obviously don't go with the kitsune. The image of the skull as a kind of helmet, of course, shows up in a lot of different cultures as an adornment on the battlefield. It's also reminiscent of what's his name? What's the name of the villain in Inuyasha? I'll find it and show you the image, because it has that sort of white fur, but it also has the skull, and he's a sort of shape changer and an evil figure, an evil magician of sorts, right? So I think, the sort of adversarial nature of this guy is fairly clear. This is who we're fighting against, at least initially. So the Seiya, Seiya, these are sort of martial arts chants. Now, it's one of those things that immediately is reminiscent of. I think this song is in some ways a direct descendant of Megitsune, um, which is the song off the first album, which has its most clearly sort of Japanese folk culture kind of roots. Um, this one is a little more outward looking, and I think it's emblematic of the whole second album, where its sense of Japaneseness is now looking outside of Japan and towards the rest of the world, right? And obviously, for most foreigners, the term megitsune or kitsune means nothing at all. So it would have a lot of significance in Japan, but not outside Japan. So moving into karate, which does have significance outside Japan, people know what that is. So it seems like we're doing a version of that. We're delving into Japanese culture and mythology, I suppose, kind of. But we're doing so in a way which is more aware of the non-Japanese culture. And the chants, the sort of festival chants, which I talked about in Megitsune, here are simply the sort of the sounds that you make when you make a movement within in karate, and that little os chant there is a kind of greeting, right? It's a sort of the ceremonial opening and closing of the bout. Yeah, man. Sue seems to have grown so much already by this point that she can go into that lower register, and it's got such, again, drama and power. That's why I think the video for this is so great, because it fits the vocal so nicely. So even if tears fall from our eyes, let's stand up against it. Whatever is causing that grief, we stand up to fight it. And she uses that ze ending, which is that sort of masculine pronoun, which I've talked about before, which gives it an extra sort of oomph, an extra strength to the tonality of the thing. And I think right from the start, standing up to what is the cause of our grief is looking inwards, right? It's not looking towards an external foe. And that's where this guy comes in, right? You see the beckoning motion that he's making here, and now you can really see the makeup on the face, which is much more linear than kabuki, and it has that sort of almost hoplite helmet kind of framing thing, and the sort of curious intensity of those unnatural eyes. But the beckoning, I think, is a kind of a pulling in to yourself, right? I think that if I have to say what this guy represents, he's not an external force. He's the things within you that paralyze and depress and confuse, right? That's the way I'm thinking of it. He's an adversary, but he's an adversary from within. This is more Wizard of Earthsea than Lord of the Rings. There's a cryptic little reference for you. Man, does anybody do this better? That the switch from that, and again, very reminiscent of Megitsune, right? That, remember the Sakura moment, the where it slows down and gets that kind of anchor kind of feel to it, slow and dramatic, and then it switches up into this energized thing where they shift into the main chorus. Hitasura saya Taka, and so Hitasura sort of single-mindedly soya soya. That's the fighting sounds again. We have to fight on. Kobushi omoto, kokoro omoto. So fighting with our fists more. Moto moto, right? Moto moto. Yes, let's not do that. Fighting more with our fists, but also kokoro with our hearts, right? Maybe even more with our hearts. Zenbu zenbu togi sumashite. Zenbu zenbu means everything, right? And togi is the sort of sharpen and grinding. I was watching a documentary about Japanese sword production the other day, and togishi is the sword polisher, or the right. There's an entire process after the sword has initially been forged, where it has to be sort of ground and then polished endlessly to get this sort of, to get the character, but also the edge, right? And it's about they talk about the soul of the sword. So we're grinding and sharpening and purifying everything, and because we are the sword, right? We're the blade. It's not. I mean, you notice that they're not wielding anything; they are the weapon, and it's, as is clear from this, right? We see it as a single figure. The bad guy, if that's what he is, he's sort of already divided into three to fight them on equal terms, and we're already into the combat. Okay, so in the first bout, we see them engage, we see that sort of stylized combat, and we see him go down. And then we go into the sort of musical break, and we see the three ghostly, shrouded figures make the, I can't do it here, kitsune sign as a kind of, an empowerment, right? Maybe drawing on the power of the fox god. And now the villain reappears, but now he's armed, and he's got a helmet, and he has a staff. And he's scary. So we go into the second round of combat, and he looks a lot more sort of menacing now because he's armed. Kokoro orarete mo. Even though, and there's that word again, kokoro, even though our hearts are fractured, our hearts are broken, and again, let's stand up and fight. So it's just the one line that's changing as we go into it, and that obviously again we're seeing more of those karate moves that have been incorporated from martial arts and from movies about martial arts. I saw them interviewed talking about watching Karate Kid and things like that. So crisp. Okay, so in this moment, obviously, we repeat the refrain. It's got that. It's so tight, that obviously we think about bands in terms of simply the music that they make, but for BabyMetal, the performance is such an intrinsic part of who they are and what they do, and it's so precise, and that's true when you see them in footage of stage performances as well. They're absolutely drilled to precision, you know, it's extraordinary stuff. Now, in this situation, interestingly, the villain guy, whoever he is, gets the better of them, right? You see that he comes through with that big overhand attack, comes slamming down, and the next thing we see, they're on the ground. Defeat, right? And then we go to this. We see another sign of the inspiring kitsune ears. Okay, so now this is where we hit the real core of the song, I think. Okay, so because the song has been about continuing in the face of adversity, even though our tears are coming from our eyes, and even though our hearts are broken, we persist, right? And we see, you know, visually and musically, I think we hear that the disappointment, the failure, as they are beaten, at least in the short term. And then we get these little moments. We see the sort of stack of blocks, which we're going to try and cut, and we see this, the other pile. I don't know what it is that we're going to try to kick through, and we see the image of Moa catching the fly. And obviously the fly catching image is also taken from Karate Kid, and it's one of those sort of, again, it's that sort of Zen thing that you have to be sort of in tune with the universe and completely calm and at peace in order to do something like catch a fly with a pair of chopsticks, or whatever, in this case just with your fingers. But these are all images of calmness, right? Of finding that sort of inner peace in the moment of greatest defeat. And then the next mode, which starts to happen here, which always gets me, is, again, reminiscent of the moment towards the end of Ijime Dame Zettai, when the three come together as a kind of pact to continue. And we get a similar thing here, where this sort of community which they are always invested in has been sort of temporarily broken by them all being knocked down. And now they come together to help each other up, right? And that's crucial, right? Because I think you think it's a song about karate, therefore it's a song about fighting. It's not really. It's a song about inner strength and sharing that inner strength with other people. Now we have the strength. Now, so as we move into the punch is now no longer going out, right? In a combat motion, it's now going up in a kind of personal strength and triumph moment. Now, we haven't won per se, but the villain is now gone, right? And this is why I was saying I think the villain is a kind of manifestation of something inside you. We haven't beaten him, except by getting up. And that's sometimes how it feels when you're dealing with depression or adversity of any kind, right? That the act of getting up is the victory. So the bad guy is suddenly gone, and now we're starting to see those three figures again, and with the sort of skull masks and the white shrouds. Chop. Kick. Oh man, God, so much there, right? In Karate Kid, the catching of the fly is an end in itself. Here, the important thing is not the catching of the fly, but the releasing of the fly, which becomes this sort of life-affirming gesture where all the other flies suddenly appear, right? It's just beautiful, just beautiful. And the the channeling of the energy outward, right? Not against an adversary, but against whatever is resistant within yourself. So we're breaking the sort of set things, but we're not fighting against people. There's a video, I might put it up or embed it in this.
空手は武道の中で唯一受け身というものがないんですけど、私たちベビーメタルもいつも受け身をせず前だけ見て突き進んでいるので、そんなベビーメタルを象徴している音楽じゃないかなと思うので、たくさんの方に聴いていただき。
And ukemi is, I mean, it's translated in various ways, but it means a sort of receiving body. In other words, an adversary, how can I put it? It frequently gets translated into questions of knowing how to fall, knowing how to receive the blow from another person, right? But this is not about, and she says, you know, she likes that about karate because it doesn't have that. And she feels that BabyMetal also don't have that. That what they're interested in is moving forward and fighting not against other people, but against themselves. And now I think that is what makes sense of the masked figures in the back, right? That the bad guy has gone away, and now it becomes clear that what we're kind of fighting really is those three figures who are the images of ourselves that have been, in a way, empowering in the past, but now have to be destroyed in order to move past them, to become something else, something stronger.
そうですね、それは自分たちを表していて、私たちはその空手をしながらその白装束の人と戦っていくんですけど、それは前の自分というか過去の自分、本当に空手のテーマとして己自身と戦う、そして一つ一つの壁を越えて前に進んでいくっていうことがテーマになっています。
And that last shout, you know, that hashire means to run or to charge. It's not a retreat, but it's not a hostile move towards someone else. It's that sort of embracing of power to charge up whatever adversities come from within us and destroy those images of ourselves as we continue to evolve and strengthen. Just gorgeous. And the you know, the images of the three hooded masked figures vanish at the end. They go away because they are no longer necessary. Right? That's the other thing. I think this is a bit like Dumbo's feather, if that means anything to anybody. That sense that the elephant can fly. He thinks that the elephant thinks it can fly because it's holding the feather, and then it turns out that it can fly because it's got massive ears and it doesn't need the feather. And I think that's kind of what we're doing here. We have these figures who seem to be figures of strength, figures who have been giving us power in the past, but in this crucial moment we realize that we don't need them, and so they can be broken and they can be dispersed. And I think this is how we think of our former selves, our past selves. And that finally is what the song is about. This is why it's not about fighting an external adversary. It's about reconciling yourself to your own strengths and resolving to continue and to continue to struggle and to continue to move forward. The last thing I would say, I think, is that, you know, I said that they're wearing that metal armor, and they wear that armor whenever they appear as BabyMetal. Right? Not just on stage or in videos, but when they're being interviewed or when they're doing some sort of promotional thing. And I think that's really telling because it addresses the sense that they are always in character, as it were, that their private life is something separate. And, you know, fans get all anxious about why we don't know enough about their private life, and we want to find out more about their private life. And I think that's, you know, wrong for lots of reasons, not least of which is because it's so clearly not our business. And I think that the metal that they wear and the metal of their names, right, Sue Metal, Yuri Metal, Moa Metal, is indicative of their armor. It's part of the way that they embody metal, as in metal music and resistance and struggle and subversion and all those things. But it's also self-protective, right? And that when you join the fan base, the fan group, the One, you also get a metal name. So you become part of that larger community, which is about sort of self-protection. And I think one of the things that you notice about BabyMetal fans is that for the most part, they tend to be very sort of self-supporting and protective and generous, which, you know, doesn't happen enough in music or in the world generally. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that.
一緒にせいやそうや言ってくれたら嬉しいなって思います。
そうや、そうそうそうや、そうや、そうそうそうや、
As ever, like, comment, subscribe. I really appreciate everybody chiming in and telling me things I didn't know, and being supportive. So, you know, I appreciate that, and talk to you soon.